Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastup Jr.
Welcome back to the Ask Ralph Show. One of the things that I get asked quite a bit in my practice is, hey Ralph, when is it time for me to retire? Now listen, I am not a financial planner, but I think there are some key areas that you could start to explore this that aren't terribly complicated. So I thought we'd spend a little bit of time today talking about this. Now there's an article that was written by Christy Bieber on April 1st, 2018, and the definition is, should I retire in 2018? Now, and I think this takes some discussions. Before you decide that 2018 will definitely be the year you want to clock out, there are a few important things you need to consider. Now, obviously, that's pretty straightforward. But I think she does a good job of laying out some real, means-based questions that we can go through. And the first one is, do you have enough savings to support you? And this is the main question. Majority of pre-retirees in America are underfunded for their future and don't have nearly enough savings, especially as our life expectancies grow. So one of the things she talks about here is how to figure out whether you have enough. You need to estimate how much income your savings will produce and whether that's enough for you to live on. And when clients ask me about this, I basically say, okay, let's look at it this way. How long do you expect to live? And then we're going to reverse engineer this back to making you penniless on the day you die. And a lot of people take offense to that, but in my personal view, I don't think it's necessary to leave money for people, once you pass on. So if you're going to take a look at this for yourself, you basically got to say, okay, well, if today I'm turning 66 and, most people in my family live to be 86, then I've got 20 years to figure out how to pay my bills. Now, one of the things they mention in here is shopping for annuities. And I'm not a huge fan of annuities. And like I said, I'm not a financial planner, but my understanding of those, they come with high fees. But the thing that's nice about them, they can provide guaranteed income in retirement. One of the things they mention here is the best type of annuity suited for retirement planners is typically a deferred fixed annuity, which starting on some future date that you've chosen will start paying a fixed amount of money at regular intervals, usually once a month. So that's like a budgeting tool. And then there's another thing they talk about here. You can use the percentage-based rules. And there's one here called the 4% rule, which says you won't run out of money if you withdraw 4% of your savings in the first year retirement, increase withdrawals for inflation in subsequent years. The problem with this is after they've looked at this, their 2013 study found that there's a 57% chance that it'll leave you broke. So I'm not sure that's the best way to go. And one of the other things they talk about here is the required minimum distribution table. And we'll talk about that in the future in some other shows, but their RMD tables basically, this has to do with if you're funded in an IRA retirement plan, how much you must withdraw starting at the age 70 and a half. Now, the reason they say this is a helpful tool for planning for retirement is the IRS withdrawal calculations are based on average life expectancies and they rise with age. So again, that's one way to look at it, and what they mention here is try each method and choose a conservative withdrawal rate and then set up a retirement budget to see if you can live on that income. Your budget should account for all of your expenditures. And here's where I want to take a couple minutes and talk. And, when I first started off in practice, I always thought, well, retirement is one of those things where you're going to spend less money, you're going to be doing less things. But what I have found in practice is that's not at all true. And it's important that you budget, for including housing, healthcare. The healthcare is a big cost, and we'll talk a little bit about that later today. Travel, utilities, foods, gifts, and other costs. You can use your current spending to get an idea of this, but keep in mind that while you may expect to spend less during retirement, what they found is half of all senior households spend more in the first 2 years of retirement, and 1/3 of seniors spending still spending that much 6 years later. So if you're not sure you can live on your planned retirement budget, try it for a month or two while you're still working. And I think that's a great idea. One of the things I've said to clients many times is, let's pretend like you're going to retire today, but I want you to work for another year. And I want you to just live off of the income that you would be having in retirement. And what this ends up doing is it really opens their eyes up to just how much or how little their income is going to be. If your income from all sources, including investment withdrawals, Social Security, and pension income gives you enough to pay for your cost as determined by your budget, then perhaps you're ready to retire. Now, The big thing we need to talk about next, and I've done several shows on this, and I'm going to be doing it in the future too, is, will you claim your Social Security, and how much will you get? Now, deciding on Social Security is really a big decision, and that's because you'll need to determine how claiming your Social Security into your retirement benefits, how it affects you for your long term, because you need to question whether you're full retirement age. And that gets into a whole complex discussion. But if you retire before your full retirement age, your Social Security benefits will be reduced. So like, for example, if you start taking your retirement at age 62, you're going to have effectively a 25% less Social Security benefits for the rest of your life. By contrast, if you keep going up until the age of 70, you can delay claiming. You'll get more money in your retirements. And one of the things they mention here is, by contrast, benefits keep going up until age 70 if you delay claiming after full retirement age. And recent research suggests you should wait until 70 to max out your benefits, as Social Security is the optimum source of retirement income. It's guaranteed for life, and you get a substantial return for delaying benefits. And that makes perfect sense. So if you can wait till age 70, you're effectively going to get, 25% more benefits. And the nice thing about that is they're locked in for the rest of your life. Assuming that the U.S. government doesn't fail, and I don't see any reason to think that it would, then that's guaranteed income for life. Now, one of the big things we need to talk about here is, what about your healthcare costs? And remember, healthcare costs are something you're going to have more of as you get older. As our population ages, and our life expectancies grow, the medical costs are growing as well. And if you're, retiring at age 65 or later, then you're generally covered by Medicare. But again, don't let that be your only form of medical coverage. There are many different kinds of Medicare there are many kinds of expenses that Medicare doesn't cover, ranging from nursing home costs to vision care to hearing aids. And seniors face costly premiums and co-insurance. In fact, there's a study they mention here. The Employee Benefit Research Institute recently estimated that a senior couple with Medicare and Medigap might need around $370,000 to have a 90% chance of covering healthcare costs in retirement. And that's where we need to talk about now. That's assuming you've hit 65. In many cases, I see clients retiring at 62, and then they get into this whole point of, well, what do I do about healthcare? And, they'll look at COBRA. Well, the problem with COBRA is that's a continuation of benefits. If you're working for somebody, is they are really expensive. And I've seen a lot of people retire early at 62, and they've had to drop their COBRA coverage because they just couldn't afford it. And the last thing they talk about here, and this is really important too, is, what is going to be your tax situation in retirement? You can say, well, I'm going to get $2,000 from Social Security, then I've got a small pension that's going to be $1,000 and all that sort of thing. But you've got to really look at that and say, okay, well, what are my net benefits going to be? Because just because you've left the workforce doesn't mean you're not paying taxes. And we'll be talking about that in the future, another show about, having your Social Security taxed. But it's something you need to factor into your budget. You've got to understand that, when you go to retire, you have to also understand, what are you going to be doing during that time? What if what if your health costs go up? And then the final thing to mention here, and I think this is very important, and that is they found retiring can be detrimental to your health if it causes you to lose social connections. So be sure to have a plan to stay connected with your community. So I hope this has been helpful deciding whether it's time to retire, and we've explored some of those ideas for you to ponder.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Saggio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware, and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.